Hey guys, so I love sharing my journey as an author with you all on this channel. And today I'm going to be talking about probably one of the best moments I've had so far in my career and all the thoughts and feelings that I have around it. But today I'm on the Creative Penn podcast with Joanna Penn. Eee! Hi, I'm MK Williams. I'm an author and independent publisher. I love sharing my insights about all things self-publishing with you. Before I get into the details of today's video, don't forget to hit subscribe. That way you can be here every week as I release videos on self-publishing, making a career of being an author, and now being a mompreneur. And today I'm going to be talking about just this really exciting moment. And I want to make this a moment, right? And so many of us indie authors listen to Joanna Penn's podcast, The Creative Penn, and take her advice to heart. And this was a really meaningful experience for me. So I want to kind of walk through like all my thoughts and feelings about being on the show. I just want to share this moment with you all because I just want to savor it a bit longer, and I kind of want to share in this moment with you. So kind of the first thing that comes to mind with all of this is like there's this phrase that like you should never meet your idols. And I think that in general, it's because it could be a letdown because you've been putting this human person up on a pedestal, and that's a really tough benchmark to meet. And I would say in this case, like whoever came up with that phrase would have been absolutely wrong. Like Joanna is just as kind and welcoming talking to her as she is listening to her podcast. And I know in my mind, like she's a person just like anyone else, and that I don't need her approval or anyone else's to validate my work as an author. But that, that validation has to come from within. But it feels really nice to know that for the years that I've spent listening and learning from her, that I got this opportunity to share a bit with her and the community of us who listen to her, and like hopefully I can help too. And it was just like, I don't know, this idea that yes, like she's this mentor, she's been a mentor to me, and she doesn't even know, this is like one of the few times we've even interacted was on the podcast, but like getting to have a conversation with her and realize like, wow, like she really is this kind and helpful and supportive in all aspects. It's not just a show. It's not just a front. Like that really is who she is. And that was like so validating too, to be like, yes, I've been following the right person. And yes, all things good. And another thing was also that like, and just like that, it's over, right? So the road to getting to this interview has been a long one. So first, I obviously had to write multiple books and be somewhat moderately successful, like follow good examples, do years of work, have something to add that hasn't been said before. So that's the whole part of the process. But really everything started back in 2019 when I was helping out with the Choose FI podcast. At the time, they were guesting on other podcasts to try and get more people to tune into their show. That's a common thing with podcasters. They'll try and get on podcasts outside of their vertical to kind of get people to listen. And they were with a podcast matching service engaged to help them do that. And I was heading to a conference actually for Choose FI and listening to an interview on Unemployable podcast that Joanna mentioned she was on. So of course I listened to it. And she talked about the concept of financial independence, or FI. And I just about like shot out of my seat, and I was like, Joanna Penn knows about FI? Like I felt like my two worlds were coming together of like self-publishing, independent publishing, and financial independence. And so I reached out to the podcast guesting service and I said, hey, like, would Joanna want to be on the Choose FI podcast? And the guys have a book coming out, so maybe Brad could be on her show. And so we were able to arrange that for what's called a pod swap, right? And so more people listening to Choose FI got to discover Joanna and her podcast who might be interested in self-publishing and independent publishing, and people listening to her podcast got to discover the Choose FI podcast and the concepts of financial independence more in depth in the book and everything. And she's been promoting the book for years now, which is awesome. Thank you. And so, there was that back and forth, and I was so excited. And since I was coordinating the bookings, I was like emailing directly with Joanna Penn, and I was like, don't be a fangirl, like don't be a fangirl. And, kind of like mentioning that. And so for most of the interviews, I was actually not on them. Like the guys can handle it by themselves, but I was like, oh, I'll just be on the background of this one, just, to help out. And I think the guys knew that I really wanted to like meet her more formally and interact with her. So they're like, oh, why don't you come on the interview with us? And I was like, okay, that's cool. And so it was a really great conversation. So it was recorded in January 2020. So obviously before the world changed forever. And so it was a great conversation back and forth. She told her story and, was able to inspire even more people about her whole journey. And then Jonathan, one of the co-hosts, threw it to me to ask her a question. And I was like, words. And I think I recovered, but yeah, it was not my best moment. I had no clue they were going to do that. But the interview wrapped, and at that point, Brad had already interviewed with her for their swap or whatever. And Brad asked me, he's like, "So when are you going to be on Joanna's show?" And like my immediate reaction was like, I don't have anything compelling to share that hasn't already been shared. And I really truly believed it at that moment. And like my husband encouraged me to like pitch her and like be on the show. And I always had all these excuses, right? Like, and for months, every time I would think of an idea that like was somewhat unique that I could speak to, she would release an episode on that topic. And I was like, that's not going to work. And then I was like, oh, my baby's coming. So like, I don't even know if I'm going to have a business next year, and like all these excuses. So finally in May of this year, 2021, my husband said to me directly, he's like, are you going to stop being a coward and pitch Joanna Penn or what? Like, and I guess I was like talking to him about like something that was on her show, and he's like, you need a pitcher. Like, I'm tired. Like, you should be on that show. Like, things, like you can share things and add value. Like, you're adding value on your YouTube channel. Like, why do you think you can't add value to her audience? And so I sent a pitch because he was right. And within, I think, maybe a couple hours, she wrote back saying, sure, let's book something for October. Like, my schedule's busy. And I had been sweating this for months, for years. And like, I should have had the confidence sooner. So I was like, okay, like she said October, I have October 1st on my calendar, reach out to like schedule, because just because she says yes, okay, we'll schedule it later. Okay, I know I have to reach back out. So I have October in my mind. Got to follow up with her. And so one morning, very, very early in early September, because baby girl got up before 6 a.m. So my husband and I are taking turns holding her while we get some coffee in our systems. And I have her in one hand, right? And I pick up my phone so I can mark, my tracking app that she just ate or whatever. And I see a notification email from Joanna, and like not her newsletter, about booking a time to record. And let me tell you, I did not pass go. I did not collect $200. I went straight to my husband and said, take the baby. And I opened the email and booked my time so fast because I was like, okay, yeah, we got to get this on the calendar. And I thought I had like another month or so to prepare, but I didn't. I had like 2-ish weeks from that email to the recording date. So I was like, okay, like this is real, this is happening. And so I will say Joanna was such a pro and like sent me questions ahead of time so I could prepare. And of course, then I rehearsed those questions with my husband. I wrote out answers. I rewrote the answers. We went over the answers. We refined, we retooled things to make sure it was a good conversation, and that I just felt like confident. And that this big moment that I had like aspired to for years, like after listening to our podcast, like that I would be prepared for it. And really, it just kind of like came and went. So it was like, now it's just been a waiting game for the episode to release. And so what was so interesting is that like this was a fun conversation. I do hope that you listen to the episode. If you don't already subscribe to Joanna Penn, like also like, why aren't you listening to the Creative Penn? So at the end of the interview, I came out of my setup and talked to my husband, and he asked for my immediate reaction. I'm like, okay, so like, how was it? Like, you've been wanting to have this conversation with this mentor to you for years. Like, how did it go? And my immediate reaction was that like, I felt like I was just talking with her like as an equal. Like, she didn't see me, or at least she didn't talk to me as though like, oh, little MK is trying so hard, which is how I felt, right? Like, she was talking to me like someone who had something to share, which reminded me that I had done the work and I was bringing my value. And my imposter syndrome was flaring that day, and it still is. But like, she did a really great job, like interviewing and just going back and forth. And I felt like I made a good connection. And like, even though I know she's an introvert and like, she talks about that a lot, and I'm kind of an introvert. So like, I always feel like we're connected in like our separate bubbles, for that reason. But like, to me, like, I've been listening for so many years, and it's been like this one-sided friendship, right? Like, I listen to her and I feel like, oh, Joanna, like, da, da, da. Like, it was finally nice to actually have like, oh, this isn't a one-sided conversation anymore. So that was like really nice. And like, the episode's out now, so you can listen to it. And like, that's my big moment I've been working towards for years. So now I need to find like a spot further up the mountain to validate myself, but also like, why do I need to validate myself with these external things, which I know I shouldn't be doing? And like, anyways, so like, to say like, if I can do like XYZ, then I know I've really done something. Like, I know I need those kind of goals. But I also need to set goals that I have control over, not goals I don't have control over. So that's a thing. Anyways, so like, I think back to like the version of me that was working long hours at my corporate job, trying to take the books that I released and make a business out of them. And like, I found her podcast and thinking like, oh, like, this is the exact help that I need. Like, I want to go back to that version of me and say like, your dream isn't crazy. Like, you're going to make it happen. And one day you'll be on this podcast and inspire the next generation of like young authors who's driving to work and feeling burnout and in need of a change to get their author business off the ground. And like, I just want to say to that younger version of me that like, wow, like it works out. It all works out. So those are my thoughts and feelings and emotions. And like, I'm super nervous that at any minute, like some authorities will be like, oh yeah, we realize you don't belong here. But until that happens, I'm going to enjoy this moment. So thank you all for sharing this moment with me and kind of letting me ramble and kind of get my emotions and thoughts and feelings out. I hope that you get to whatever your pinnacle moment is on your journey too. Like, you know, for me, like being able to talk to somebody who's been a virtual mentor of sorts, like that was a big moment for me. And I hope for you, like whatever that is, that you get that too. And you really appreciate the moment and you savor it, because these moments do just come and go. And then you're like, oh, well, that's done. And then again, I want to give a big thank you to Joanna for letting me ramble and blabber on your show and for making it sound good. And for just being such a role model and such a great source of information for this independent author community. And yeah, those are my thoughts. So if you want to make me feel a little less nervous today and maybe a little bit more validated, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe. It lets YouTube know that you're getting value and you want to see more videos from me, and I can get it in front of other authors like us who are excited and working hard on our dreams. All right. Now you can get back to writing your book.